page and I was feeling so good. And then I looked at the chat and I thought, oh, shoot, round 2, second time's a charm. Thank you, Arturo. I am honored to be here today. I'm so sorry about that. I'm so happy to be here today and lead the conversation around strategic planning. I would first like to start off by introducing you to our talented all-female panel of local experts who are here to share some of their experience with you. First up, we have Liz Choi, Chief Strategy and Growth Officer at Education Canada Group, President at Robertson Online, and incoming Winnipeg Chamber Board Chair. Throughout her career, she has been a catalyst for cross-functional efficiencies and an effective problem solver who can overcome complex challenges and resolve operational process problems, formulate strategic solutions, and implement changes that benefit the organization's bottom line. Welcome, Liz. We are thrilled to have you. Next, we have Tamara Kuly, Strategic Planning and Implementation at Blueprint, Inc. Tamara is an experienced strategist and consultant. Her clients include executive teams, small business owners, and nonprofit organizations in Manitoba. She engages stakeholders to gather diverse perspectives and data to help her clients make and manage effective plans. Prior to joining Blueprint Inc., Tamara spent 17 years leading marketing teams and strategic planning in Manitoba's telecom sector. So welcome, Tamara. It's great to have you. Lastly, we have Amelia Laidlaw, co-founder, business and marketing strategy for Tandem Collaborative. Amelia is an experienced entrepreneur. Oh, there's Tamara.
Hi there.
It's all about the technical issues today, so thank you for being here with us, you guys. I promise it's going to get better. Amelia is an experienced entrepreneur, business strategist, project manager, and the co-founder of Tandem Collaborative. She works alongside her clients to prioritize goals for growth, define their brands, and identify solutions so they can engage more effectively with their customers. She is passionate about strategy and big thinking, but she understands the process of implementing those big ideas and the planning that makes it real. Very important. So welcome, Amelia. We're thrilled to have you.
So happy to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so I, for one, am so excited about today's panel. On a personal note, we have this amazing all-female panel, and I know from our prior discussions prior to this meeting, all of you have such incredible and diverse experience that I think a lot of us are going to have a lot of takeaways from that I'm so excited about. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? Let's do it. So first off, how are you all doing?
Great. How are you doing, Amanda?
Doing well.
I'm good now that I'm actually on the camera. That's exciting. I'm good now. Thank you. So maybe let's go around. Tell me about yourself and then your role at your organization. So maybe, Tamara, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I have a commerce degree, so I graduated from what was known as the Faculty of Commerce at U of M many years ago, and went through and worked in pharmaceuticals, a pharmaceutical company, and in an internet company, and then I worked with MTS for 17 years, and now I have taken all of that experience, and when I left MTS in 2016, I do strategic planning in a few areas. One is with small businesses, another is with industry organizations, and I have a specific focus on gender equity and diversity planning within strategic planning. I love numbers. I love turning numbers into meaningful things, and I love translating between worlds where we have these male-dominated fields. So I've worked a lot in engineering, in construction, and with IT and tech into our world of humans. So taking those numbers and bringing a female vibe. So that's me.
Amazing. I'm always jealous of people who are good at numbers. I am the complete opposite. So love it. Amelia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the co-founder with my business partner, Larissa Peck, of Tandem Collaborative. We are a product of the pandemic, I should say, pretty new business. We mostly work with small businesses to create business and marketing strategy that can be implemented into their day-to-day operations, understanding that the challenges of a small business owner are really different than a larger organization. for myself, I came to doing this from like a pretty non-traditional path. I went to school to become a contemporary dancer of all things. And then after dancing professionally for a couple years, took another 180 and bought a small restaurant and cafe in Toronto. So I have that kind of like crash course in entrepreneurship. Through running that for close to 6 years, I learned a lot about, what it really means to own a business. And I think you can study it all you want, but until you're like right in the throes of it, it's hard to understand what the challenges are, but also what the rewards are too. And after that, my most recent position after owning my own business was working at the Forks Market. So I managed the Forks Market as a whole, working with the many tenants in that building, making sure things went smoothly for all of the visitors at the Forks. And I really came to realize that I loved working with small businesses and the people who run them through being at the Forks, and that had a big part to play in where I am now.
That's incredible. What a journey that is. I love when people have such untraditional, business paths that their lives take. I think that's so incredible. So thank you. We're so excited to have you. Liz, do you want to talk about yourself?
Sure. I keep wanting to talk more about other two panelists, but I'm sure, Amanda, you're going to walk us through that. So as Amanda mentioned, I have dual title position at the company. So as Chief Strategy and Growth Officer, I'm responsible for pretty much everything to do with the strategy and growth, as the title calls it, and focused on growing both top and bottom lines. So by that, I mean, I oversee marketing, sales, user technology platforms, operations, product development, you name it, whatever brings us growth and strategy. And my other hat as president of our fastest growing division, Robertson Online, I do work with 60 plus team members. So I think that would be as close as it would get to in running a small to medium sized business. So as for a bit of my personal background, I moved to Canada at the age of 14 as an international student, and then I never left. So my first job actually was a high school teacher working with young moms. So at the age of 22, working with a 19-year-old mom who had a lot more life experience than I did was a year that I will always cherish. And one thing led to another, and here I am doing everything strategy and growth. So that's my story.
That is incredible. So, I mean, 3 totally different stories, but but it's amazing how you kind of have all gotten on a similar path, which is really exciting. So I'm excited to learn more from all of you. So as Arturo mentioned, a lot of the time we think about strategic planning as something that takes a lot of time, but that might not always be the case. I know for myself as a small business owner, it sometimes can feel overwhelming, and you want to maybe invest a lot of time into it, and then sometimes it takes you away from working on the business as opposed to working in the business as opposed to working on the business. So Liz, maybe let's go back to you for this one, just to kick it off. How do you think effective strategic planning can save small business owners time in the long run?
Sure. So I think for small businesses in particular, strategic planning means different things to different businesses, industries, and people. And really, we have to break it down to micro level. So to me, just getting into that habit of micro strategic decision making and micro judgments, really based on future opportunity and outlook that you can see, then you get to sharpen that strategic planning skills as you go. And before you know it, you're going to become a pro at it. So it doesn't have to be a 3-year plan out. It could be, depending on your business cycle, like if you're running a restaurant and your cycle, really you want to look at it every quarterly or every semi-annually, you set that bar. As long as you're moving forward and raising that bar every time you do your strategic planning, then you're set. And each time you do it, you're going to become more used to it. And in the long run, you'll save time in running your business, generally speaking.
Love it. That's wonderful advice. Amelia, what are your thoughts on that? What are some ways I think, effective ways small businesses can save their time by having an effective strategic plan?
I think it's really about setting intentions for your business. And I think for small business owners, it's often about having that kind of long-term vision mixed in with your day-to-day. And where I find small business owners benefit from having that is in just having a quicker decision-making process, because you have, instead of every time something comes up, an opportunity comes up, you're not just thinking, you're not considering all the factors, you're seeing if it aligns with your long-term goals. And sometimes it means turning something down, but at the end, the end of the day, I think you're setting yourself up to reach your goals rather than getting caught up with all the other busyness, which inevitably is going to happen too.
Yeah, that's great advice. Tamara, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I would, use Amelia's point as a springboard. It provides focus. So once you've determined what your should be limited direction is in terms of what you're going to be doing, you can quickly reflect back on your intentions or your strategic direction or your specific goals that you set. And as these things come up as entrepreneurs, you're like, yes, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah.
But you really do have to say no to some things because they're distractions. They don't fit right. They don't fit right now, those kinds of things. So it allows you step back and you reflect back on what your plan is and what your focus is. I like to use the goals as my reference point. Is this going to push one of my stated goals forward? No, then I'm putting it off onto the other list of things to look at later.
I love that. And I just want to remind everyone who's watching, we are checking the chat as well. So I strongly encourage you all to comment, ask questions, let us know if you have anything specific that you'd like to know. We're going to hopefully have some time at the end for questions as well. But I know that's a great point, Tamara. I know myself, it's easy when you're, especially a new business owner, to find that direction and that focus. And I think a lot of people sometimes can get that shiny object syndrome or ADHD syndrome, where you're just wanting to try and do it all. And then you all of a sudden are completely off course and you don't know why or maybe how that happened. Is that something that you kind of see a lot with maybe people
absolutely
that are starting new businesses?
Yeah, and we've experienced it ourselves, especially in a services role. We do things for people. What do? We help them. We advise them in their business. We help them with their strategic planning. So they'll come to us and they'll say, "Do you do this?" And we're like, do we do that? I don't know. I think we might do that. I've done that before. Do we do that now? So being able to really go back to that plan and those goals and say, what are we focused on right now? We might do that later. We might have done that in the past. But what are we doing now? I've lived that with Blueprint in different iterations. I've lived that in other jobs within a large corporate environment where we've had to call VPs and directors off of their giant idea because it just doesn't fit with it, right? So it's like, sorry, you can't do that now. We're doing this other thing and we're going to do that first. So yeah, it happens not just to small businesses. It happens all the way up to the very large corporations.
Wow. This is just a personal question. How often, I know, Liz, you kind of mentioned, how often you should look back at a strategic plan, because I know that's something that I think a lot of small business owners aren't maybe sure of, and they can overthink it as well. Like sometimes I think you can work on it too much. Sometimes I think you maybe don't work on it often enough. What are your thoughts regarding that? How often should you revisit your strategic plan?
Is that to me?
Whoever wants to jump in. Yeah.
I'll jump in. It really, whatever fits with your business. You may be going through a rapid growth time where you need to just focus on taking care of your customers and your plan and you're enacting it and that's fine. You may also be at a crossroads where you need to make decisions. So that's a point in time where unscheduled, you should probably look at your strategic plan. I recommend that you at least look at how you're doing as per your goals and you actually gather your results on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
That may not mean rejigging your plan. That just may mean like giving yourself a green check mark and saying, yeah, we're on schedule here. Let's just keep moving ahead and implementing the plan. And it may mean mitigation. So quarterly check on results for sure. But other things will draw you to that plan and make you need to check it less often or more often.
Awesome. Love it. Amelia, what are common key indicators that a business may require a new strategic direction? And what role do KPIs or key performance indicators or any form of measurement play in that decision?
Yeah. I think like it can be really simple and like things that I think just anyone could relate to. Like if you're feeling uninspired, whether it's in your job or it's the business you own, looking at why you're doing what you're doing. And that can be like a really simple way to build your strategy into your business. I think another aspect of that is like plateauing in your growth and then taking a step back and looking why you're plateauing and building strategy around that. And the other time I think to visit it is anytime you integrate a new business opportunity or stream, or you are intentionally growing your business. I think that's the time to look at, again, why you're doing, what's like the controlling factor, the controlling idea in what you're doing, but then also how are the logistics supporting that? For us, like we work with like sometimes solopreneurs, sometimes small businesses, and we really like, I think I can say the word KPI has never come out of my mouth in a conversation, but it doesn't mean that we don't use them. But I think that sometimes with things like strategic planning, it can feel a bit corporate and it can feel a bit intimidating. So I think it's finding like goal setting. And for us, a big question we ask our clients when we start working with them is like, what does success look like to you? Because we might have an idea of what success looks like, but we want to know what success feels like for you. And sometimes just the act of stating that goes a really long way. I mean, for our relationship with our client, but also for them to say, oh, this is what success looks like for me. So yeah, I'd say they're very much integrated into the work that we do for our own business and for our clients, but we really don't set them out as a really formal measurement.
I love it. I love that. And I think you kind of nailed it. Like, I think the word why is just so important. I think a lot of people tend to forget that. So coming back to your why, and I think that can help realign what your strategic plan is and your goals. So that's wonderful. Liz or Tamara, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, I could build on what Amelia has just said on that as well. Like as small business owners, particularly, I think you just know, right? Because you're so intimately involved. It is your business, so sometimes you have that feeling, and then your metrics tell you. So you start to see things plateau, or see lower engagement, customer engagement, lower rate of returning customers. So that's when you really take action, right? So in a perfect world, you would strategic plan to avoid this, but that's not how a real world operates, as we all know it. So I think just looking at that and then using it as an opportunity to not just grow, but also to level up and changing the narrative around it. So if the thought of strategic planning or changing a strategic direction scares you, then ask yourself, how do I level up from here? Right? Because that is your way of doing strategic planning without using the language behind it.
Love it.
And as for the KPIs, I have a love and hate relationship with KPIs, but I'll say this: they're called key performance indicators, right? So stick to key KPI, key ones. So a few, less is more. That's what I would leave the group with.
That's great advice. I know myself, like you always say to yourself as a business owner, like, oh, I should, be doing more with my KPIs, but at the end of the day, yeah, you feel kind of guilty if you're not maybe spending that much time or attention. So that's a wonderful way to put it in perspective and remind yourself. Tamara, do you have anything else you want to add?
I just reinforce what Liz just said about KPIs. Less is more. Pick the ones that are important for your values and what you want to do with your organization. Don't just dive in and pick all the numbers you can generate or see. That's not going to help you. It's going to be distracting and lots of busy work. I have in the past used a balanced scorecard model. I actually don't recommend using that whole model itself, but I like one of the aspects of it, which is actually building out on 4 quadrants. You look at your customers, you look at your financials, you look at your internal business efficiencies, and you look at your team. So that's if there are 4 things you can pick out from those categories and zero in on that, you're good to go.
Love it. I love that. I'm like, I got to write this down somewhere. That's wonderful.
There's lots online about balanced scorecard. You can go and read to your heart's content. But those 4 quadrants I find very beneficial, just to make sure you're looking at all the things. It's so easy to look at financials, right? They're given to you. Your accountant is pounding on the door telling you to look at these and whatever. But the other things are just as important, and in fact, sometimes more important. So
yeah, that's a very, very, very good point. Perfect. So Tamara, I'm going to go back to you. So strategic planning requires a mindset that is ready to embrace change. How do you find that mental clarity for you and your team?
Well, I'd say it doesn't always need to be change. So you need to be open to change. So yes, I think that one, taking yourself out of your regular business place while you're doing it, like physically just removing yourself from that space.
Absolutely.
Right now, it's hard to meet too. Even going for strategic planning walks. Our firm, we do these business walks. Just you're outside, you're getting fresh air, you're chatting, you're energized. You can't write much down, but you get a lot out and a lot of thinking out. So there's that. So get yourself out of your space. That'll help you think differently. And integrate somebody from outside of your organization to the process somewhere. And I've talked about this before. Outside eyes bring a ton of clarity. They ask great questions, and they're not going to be worried about, pressing your buttons because they don't work with you on a daily basis. They can ask the hard questions that you might be a little sensitive or trying not to see or just not seeing. So those would be the 2 things that I would suggest in terms of being able to position yourself well to do change, to make change.
I love that. I completely love what you said about taking yourself outside the business. I always say, like, for us at Kuly & Canary, we always try to look at our business from our customers' perspective, which also can sometimes help us and see if we need to make changes. So I think that's great. Amelia, did you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I think that when part of the work of building a strategic plan is setting your values and again, that why for your business. But then I think the next step is, unless you work all by yourself, is making sure other people know that too. Because then when you do try new things or you take a different direction, then people are on board because they understand that you're trying to end up in the same place. You're not just taking everyone for a wild ride.
I love that. Is that something that, maybe we should talk a little bit about that. Our strategic plans, I think strategic plans are something that you should maybe share parts with your team or maybe the whole thing. What are your thoughts on that? Because I agree. I think that, everyone's working towards the same goals. And if your staff don't really know what those goals are, that can cause unalignment. So, what are your thoughts around that?
I would say 100%.
My thoughts are, I think it depends. Yes, share it. And I think don't withhold information. I think if the interest is there, it's how you can share it from within all levels of your team. And it means that when a customer experiences your business, they experience the same feeling, whether they are speaking to the CEO or a cleaner. But with that, I think you have to have a very simple, straightforward goal and direction that people don't have to think oh, wait, what was on page 5 of our strategic plan?
Right.
They're no, we do this because of this reason. And I can always check back with myself, whoever I am within this organization and see if it fits that really 1 to 2 things, I think.
I love it. Liz, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree that we should not only just share it, but we should all co-own it when it comes to having that strategic plan at the company. I think for some people, having that mindset becomes more challenging because they have a harder time applying themselves into how that strategic planning process works or how the execution will work, because some are naturally more operations driven, metrics driven, and so on. And often strategic plans get shelved because we fail at execution. So if you're not always, you're not in a position to be strategic planning per se, but you will be one of the co-owners, then I would advise that, look at it as a approach of doing strategic execution. We call it stratecution. So you're really looking at how you're going to execute it once the plan is in place. Then I think shifting that mindset and then bringing it to the whole process of strategic plan development will become more naturally.
I love that. And kind of like Amelia, what you're talking about, kind of breaking it down and simplifying it. Even I know for myself, we update our strategic plan or I do anyways, pretty often. And then I do kind of break it down into our main kind of goals from that for our team. So I think, like you said, I think that's great advice for everyone. Perfect.
I would just add, Amanda, can I just add one other thing? For larger companies, so where I have worked in where Liz does work now, there's levels and there's a lot of people involved. Right. And I think a key leadership piece of that is letting people see exactly how they fit into that strategy. So as a leader, I need to be responsible to make sure that everyone on my team can say, I fit in here. And they have a clear, it may not be at the top level, it may be lower down, but they know exactly where they fit in. And when larger organizations, it becomes much more challenging, especially when you're at the operational level. So as leaders, for people who are leading groups of people, that's an important thing to do.
I have a dumb question. There are no dumb questions,
doubt that.
Right?
No, that's right.
So is the strategic planning process something that you would recommend involving some of your team members in, or parts of it?
Absolutely. You can't do it without their involvement. And really also having the culture of like promoting curiosity, because it's just going to become an exercise otherwise. And that often comes from actually team members that you don't usually interact with.
I think also different team members have different experiences of the business. And I think a good leader lets people take some autonomy within, their own section of what they do. So I think that insight is invaluable. Or it is valuable.
Awesome.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm glad to hear that. No, that's perfect. And I think you're right. It's all about getting everyone on the same bus, right? I mean, you're all driving towards the same goals. So the more you can involve your team with your goal setting and intentions, I think the better. So I'm glad to hear that. Perfect. So maybe we'll start with Liz on the next question. Liz, can you walk us through an example of a strategic planning process? I know this is maybe new to some people. Maybe some people have never done strategic planning. Some people maybe have done a lot of it, but what are your thoughts around maybe how to get started?
Sure. I like to approach strategic planning in three major phases. So one, first is pre-planning. So that is the pre-launch of the strategic planning process. And then we do the development of the plan and then ultimately the execution. So during the pre-planning phase, so this is when you let your team members go have some fun, go wild. Like I want the team members to go get as much diverse perspective of the environment by doing their own research. So if they're looking for some guidance, like we're future investigating, I mentioned that in the video that went out earlier in the week. So ask them questions like, who offers best customer experience out there? What kind of industry is it? How are they doing it? Which company do you admire the most? Why? Who is your benchmark? What is our next level? How has our world of work changed? And does that change the way we approach strategic planning? So when our teams are out researching, future investigating, I guess myself, who would be facilitating this process, would be working internally with various stakeholders. Like for myself, it will be our management team and our board members to really figure out what the essential requirements are for the strategic plan, what I like to call non-negotiables, so that when we come back as a team, then we at least have a baseline in terms of things that are not negotiable, and then we can be still creative, keeping those factors in mind. And then we get into development, involving as many stakeholders as possible, team members, customers, outside vendors, business partners, and then including a high level KPIs, and then we go to execute. So 3 stages. I guess that's how I see it. And then within each phase, obviously there are multiple steps or processes, but once you have that core research done and excitement and passion for it, and strategic planning could be fun. It could be. Some may not believe me, but it could be.
Absolutely. That's
We all think it is.
That's awesome. Amelia or Tamara, do you have anything to add, or do you have different ways that you process a strategic plan?
I mean, I guess the way that we work is just, I think it's like a lot of the same foundations. It just looks a little different because so often we're working with like one single business owner, either, who has a team, but often we start with that person. But right. I really love how, like you say, Liz, like to just like kind of go wild and explore. And I think that's one exercise that we always encourage people to do in the beginning of the planning process is like, what is your big goal? Like not any, like without any barriers of, the logistics or, oh, that would be too hard to do. Like, what does that look like? And then set that as like the long-term goal and then start setting the steps to get there. But, I think it's so important to just like be really free in that first part and not start thinking of all the reasons you can't do it or why you don't have enough time. And then you start looking at, the realities and what's realistic and make very, have a bit of wiggle room, but have the intention to be very consistent with what you do. Because especially for a small business owner, I think it can be easy to try something for a few weeks or a month and say it's not working, and you don't have anyone on your team, you don't have anyone to say, hey, no, like stick with it. So to really set that for yourself, how long you're going to stay with something until you say, you know what, this isn't for me, I need to change direction. But
awesome.
Yeah,
I think that is awesome. I know at Cole & Canary, we're a little untraditional here. I don't know if you guys know this, but we have a thing that we like to do with our staff. And whenever we are looking at redoing our strategic plan, we have this what we call a WIG. So it's our wildly imaginative goal. And we as a whole team come up with what this year's WIG is going to be. There's even a little picture of a wig beside it. It's a whole thing. Anyways, like you said, it can be fun, right? Like you got to find ways to make it fun. But our team loves it and we get really into it. We go around, we talk about what their ideas of what our WIG could be for this year. And then that kind of sets the tone for what the strategic plan follows and looks like. So I agree. I think that's a really good idea, looking at your big why and your big goal. So Tamara, do you have anything else?
I love the wig. I love your wig. That is so great. I will remember that forever because of the acronym. That is amazing.
This is a very short side note, but we actually have a woman who donated a trunk full of mannequin wigs to us because we had this whole thing. Anyways, so we originally were inspired by that. So we thought we're going to call it our wig and we'd all wear wigs, and it was a whole thing. Anyways,
so great.
I'm going to go back to you, Tamara.
Sure. I love that, though. I'm going to use that, just so you know. So the only thing I would add is at the beginning of our processes, generally speaking, we do stakeholder engagement. So often a part of, we were brought in as a third party, right, to help move this along. So we ask the people who bring us in, whether that be the owner, an HR department, something like that, whoever is, or a board chair, somebody who's bringing us in, we start with them and we interview them and kind of figure out where things are at. We ask for a whole bunch we do a data request. We ask for as much information as we can. So we, as a neutral third party, can kind of build a SWOT analysis for them that shines back at them, kind of where they're at, and then validate that with them later. But we also go out to stakeholders, whether that be board members, customers, people within the industry that are outside, government, people who are responsible for their regulatory. We do we ask for permission to go and do interviews with those people, so we can see where there are some underlying or not necessarily understood things to add into that SWOT. So we can provide the planning team with a really good base for starting. So they can see like, oh, this is an opportunity we didn't even know was coming. So that's one thing that we add. And at the end, we do a cascade. So yeah, there's the planning team. There has a certain number of people because it can't be so big. But then we go through the process of communicating that plan down through the rest of the organization as it applies. Small business, obviously, we won't need to do too much of that. But larger organizations, we sometimes have lots of meetings. We could record video calls. We could train people within the organization to talk about it with their team members. But that's the other end of the strat planning, to make sure everybody understands what's going on, is to kind of get out the door that way.
I love that. And you actually said something that resonated, and I think is a big not problem, but I think it applies to everyone, where sometimes when you're working on your strategic plan, there are opportunities that you didn't even know existed in your business that maybe you are not seeing. And is that something that is common that you all see sometimes, like working with the different clients?
We see that often because people are in the business and they're in it every day. They're working on it 6 or 7 days a week. So coming up and having somebody from the outside say, hey, did you notice that this right here, really? I can do that? Or this is a really big loan payment that you can renegotiate. We can help you fix, we'll help reduce your costs. So we can look at those things, point to the things that we can quickly identify as opportunities to help them that they maybe thought were set in stone or weren't even there. It happens all the time.
That's
one thing that we would refer to with that is just not leaving anything on the table. And that's our job when we go in. And you don't have to take on every opportunity, and we don't encourage people to take on every opportunity either.
Right.
But we want to lay out what's out there and how those opportunities interact together, I think.
Perfect.
But I guess on the other side of that too, I also want to say that we talk to a lot of business owners who actually have so much of that in the back of their mind, but they're just so bogged down. And then I think our job as the strategist is to help pull that out and pull it out in a way that feels like it can be implemented.
Love it. I love it. Liz, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think we're good to move to the next question.
Perfect. So Amelia, I'm going to go back to you. And this is something that I am really excited to hear everyone's answers, because I think there's a lot of these. But what are some common mistakes that people might make during the strategic planning process?
I think we've kind of touched on a lot of those. And I think if you work on a team, is not integrating your team into what's going on.
Yeah.
And literally if it's a group of 2 or if it's a group of 200, I think that's a really big part of it. But then I also think just going back to the idea of consistency, and, when you have say a full marketing team, it's a lot easier to be consistent when you're maybe, running your own marketing as a small business. It can be a bit harder when you're not seeing those immediate payoffs. So I think the lack of consistency, kind of start and stop, can be a bit of a mistake, but it's our job to also ensure that implementation is worked in as part of the plan.
Perfect. That's great. Tamara or Liz, do you have any points to add to that?
Sure. So I'm not going to beat on the KPI thing anymore. But I always say that, strategic planning is a combination of your killer business instinct. I see that in you already, and Amanda, and a form of evidence-based insight searching, right? So getting too hung up on the KPIs would be a common mistake that I think is. And another thing is getting too hung up on the process of the plan, or really focusing only on your portfolio, especially if you have multiple departments working on it together. Getting customer insight too late or not at all. and approaching the strategic plan as a risk management tool rather than a vision and a growth driver, then it limits the scope of the plan, so it may not be as effective. Restricting the scope of planning without getting external perspective. So going back to the point Tamara made earlier, that getting as much perspective to make it as diverse as possible would be the key to success in building a strategic plan.
Perfect. Tamara, do you have anything else to add to that?
I would say as a facilitator of strategic planning, and maybe as like two leaders who are asking this to happen, is to make sure that while you're going through the process, you're hearing from everyone. As you can tell, Amelia, Liz, and I are not shy. We will answer questions and we'll jump in and all that. There's a lot of people like us. There's a lot of people not like us who need quiet, who need another way to participate. And so making sure that you as a leader or as a facilitator are leaving room for that participation and not letting anyone bogart the meeting, that's important, because otherwise you will not see what happens or the different perspectives, and you'll miss something for sure. Those people who are sitting and watching, they have some key insights and they need to be able to have time to speak.
I love that. And I always say, obviously more brains are better than one, but you know what you know, but you don't know what you don't know. So I think opening it up and including your team and having those perspectives is so critical. And I completely agree. So that's fantastic. Okay, so we have another question. Given today's climate of uncertainty, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs and business professionals who are trying to do a strategic plan but aren't sure maybe what the next 6 months or a year looks like in regards to restrictions? I know that's really tricky. What would you recommend? And anyone can kick it off.
I'll start.
Sure.
If no one else is jumping in.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all stood back and tried to.
It's a hard one.
We all, I would say that number one, you are not alone. We are all in that position, whether it be in our business or in our life or in our schooling, wherever we're at. This is a period of high global uncertainty. So this idea that you need to be ready to put on the gas the second that things open up, everyone is in this position. Things will open up as they open up. The economy and people will be able to participate as they are able to participate. Give yourself the flexibility to stand back if that is the best use of your time. It may not be, but at least let yourself consider it, because sometimes pushing hard and driving and developing in this time and space is just busy work. And it may not actually help you. You may need to take this time and sit and chill and then jump in when you get to see things. So just allow for that possibility. I'm not saying you have to do it, just sit back and go on vacation or whatever. But allow for the possibility, because this is like war. We're all affected. Things are also, and we don't know how things are going to catch up and move forward. So be kind to yourself and don't drive yourself crazy with, I got to do this, I got to move, I got to increase, I got to do, just give yourself the space.
That's fantastic. Very, very good points. And I think also, I know myself as an entrepreneur, I feel like COVID in 2020 was almost pushing the big reset button. It was like, okay, time to reset and refocus and, relook at those strategic plans. And like you said, don't put so much pressure on yourself though, allow time to kind of, guide you and figure it out as time goes on. So I'm happy to hear that. Amelia or Liz, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love what you said there, Tamara, and I think that people, when you do step back and realize maybe you don't always need that plan, having a bit of faith that you probably can figure it out too, and you don't need to have X, Y, and Z plan in case all these different things happen, because we've gone through it too many times now. So you have to be kind of ready to roll with it. But I also think that really understanding what the pillars of your business are in its original form. And then as you need to shift, it's okay to be doing something different, but how do you bring those pillars in? If customer service in your brick and mortar location was number one for you, how are you bringing that into your e-commerce, or how are you bringing that into your curbside pickup experience? Because you are still going to be giving your customers that same feeling no matter how they're visiting you. And I think that is how we're seeing businesses stand out right now too.
Love it.
Yeah,
Liz,
if
do you
I
have anything
could
else to add to
build-
that?
Yeah, I will build on both Amelia and Tamara's points. I think in the past, during the pandemic, we've also seen a lot of customers wanting to support local businesses. And I think generally many have been also more forgiving, right? So ask them in terms of what you've been doing right, what they would have liked to see differently done, and focus on those areas to improve. Going back to strategic planning in the time of uncertainty, that's where I think we can really, since we are forced to spend some time alone, to really think about, reflect on that and channel our fear into curiosity. So who has really excelled during the last 6 months to a year? Is there commonality in those businesses that you can learn from? And from there, are you able to apply what you see, or if you aren't, then what do you need to get there? Like, how do we raise that bar? And really, I think at this point, one thing that many businesses need to consider is, are you able to scale in the digital economy that we accidentally got to much faster thanks to COVID, right? So a lot to think about, but I think focusing on what you know rather than what you don't know, and then really turning your fear into curiosity will give you some clarity, and hopefully that will give you some light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow, that is great advice. And I think a lot of us tend to, when we're business owners, we put our blinders on and we're so focused on our business that we forget to step back and maybe look at other businesses that are local, that are thriving, or, that are aspirational. Like you said, what are they doing? Are there things that they're doing that maybe I can integrate into my business? What isn't working? So, that is fantastic advice. I really, really love that. Perfect. Okay, so we have time, I think, maybe for 1 or 2 audience questions. Linda has a question. She says, how do you make strategic planning more accessible to solopreneurs, service-based businesses? And she also added that sometimes they're more often women-led or led by Black, Indigenous, women of color who've been hit really hard by COVID. She also added, building on what Amelia mentioned about how strategic planning can, feels really corporate. So how do you kind of bring that down and make it more accessible to everyone?
I would say that you think about what strategic, I literally did this exercise for myself last night because I kept thinking about strategic planning and I was like, but wait, what even is it now that I've thought about it so much?
Yeah.
And I think you look at what it means to you, and then you find the terminology that makes sense for you. Like, for example, we had a client who hated the idea of goals, but then when we talked about them as intentions, she was like, oh, I get that. I can integrate that. So I think it's like finding the terminology that feels like it's part of you. It's not something that you're like sticking on top of what you do. It's already there and it's already part of the conversation. And then I think with a solopreneur, I think seek that outside opinion as often as you can. And it can be a professional opinion. You can work with a coach, you can work with somebody else, but also just find the people in your life that you trust, that you can run ideas past, because we have had so many solopreneurs that we've worked with who have told us about like this, like, oh, I have like kind of an okay idea sitting on the back burner. And we're like, no, that's amazing. Like, and they're like, okay, that's all I needed. And then they're like, making the plan for it. So I think just like those little things that go on inside your head, share them with people and like in real time, work them out.
Love it. I love it. That's fantastic. I'm going to jump to another question just because we only have a few minutes left. So we're going to have one last audience question. Delaney asked, we have 5 service streams in our business. That is a lot. What advice could you give to create a simple, memorable strategic plan that creates focus in each of the multiple business streams? That's a great question. I don't know who wants to start. That's a hard one. So
I can start with, I worked in a very, very large company with more than 5. So I'll tell you one of the ways to do it that you can potentially contemplate. The top line strategic plan that you create for the company, people should be able, from those 5 streams, be able to see themselves somehow in that, whether it be general enough language or an overall direction that everyone can kind of buy into. But then the creation of a second level of that plan that speaks to each of those 5 business units would be important. So not setting a new set of values or new mission, but looking at the goals and the strategies that are above and saying what in your plan speaks to those, and organize yourself based on those items. It helps you say, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing the things that we had planned because they don't really speak to this larger strategic plan that we're doing. But it allows you to then feed each operational unit with something that is in their language, written by them, and validated through them, that then speaks to the thing above. That's what I would suggest.
Wow. Liz or Amelia, do you have anything else you want to add to that just before we wrap up?
I think core purpose that all the 5 streams or departments can relate to, because that's going to guide the plan. So yeah, I echo everything that Tamara said.
Perfect. Amelia, any closing remarks?
I mean, as far as that question, I think you nailed it. And I think, you know, Tamara, like with anything, yeah, just going back to that core purpose.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, ladies. We're just going to quickly throw it to Liz because I think we have a little contest or a voucher that is going to be given away. So Liz.
Yeah, thank you. So, well, when I was asked to be on this panel, I couldn't help but think about how I could add value after this hour for all the attendees who made time to be here. And one thing that we've seen a lot of is many businesses moving to e-commerce, and many small to medium-sized businesses have a struggle to get there more quickly. So at our Robertson Online division, we recently launched an introduction to e-commerce program, a micro course. It is a paid course for the public, but we will be making it free for all the attendees today. So after the event, I think Riel will be sending out a survey link in an email. So in the same email, you should be able to get a link with a password that will get you right to the registration.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Liz, and your team. That's fantastic. Amelia, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm signing up right away, Liz. That's such a great offer. But we will also, and this will be sent out with the post-event survey, but we also wanted to share an offer for our business deep dive workbook, which does just help you lay out kind of like what those foundations are, really getting clear on your offer for the people who attended today. And then with that too, we want to offer a spot in one of our upcoming workshop series, which will focus again on really defining your offer and the core purpose of your business.
Amazing. Wow, look at all this special stuff we got today. That's amazing. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for joining. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I feel like we could learn so much from you ladies. I could talk to you all day. Thank you so much for joining us for our panel conversation. And thank you so much for all of you for joining our virtual small business forum. The conversations today are going to be extremely beneficial for our community small business owners as we look ahead to the future. It was my absolute pleasure to help navigate today's conversation. Before we break into our roundtable breakout sessions, I just want to remind you about 2 upcoming events. On Thursday, April 15th, the Chamber will be having our Civic Leaders Dinner virtually. Elected officials and the administration's C-suite will move between tables virtually, direct conversation between Winnipeg's top influencers. That's going to be an amazing event. Tickets are $25 plus GST and spots are limited. And it's in support of Truth and Reconciliation. And the Chamber will be donating ticket proceeds to Hamayork, Winnipeg's new Inuit Art Center, which looks beautiful, and I cannot wait to see it. Lastly, the Chamber's April luncheon entitled The Business of Being Well with David Patchell Evans, founder and CEO of Good Life Fitness, will be hosted virtually on April 22nd. We'll also be announcing this year's Spirit of Winnipeg award finalists at this luncheon, which I had the honor of joining to the judging committee for. So you will not want to miss this one. There are some incredible businesses nominated. Register for both events at winnipeg-chamber.com. Now is the time to do some networking and debrief on today's topic in our breakout seminars. And here is how it's going to work. So on the left-hand side, you will see a tab that says Sessions. And under that, there's the Stage tab. And in each breakout room, the individual who's been at their current organization the longest will be the conversation facilitator. I like that it's not the oldest. That's nice. If you are the facilitator, please encourage each attendee to do quick introductions. And from there are 3 questions to guide each roundtable discussion. Are you ready for these questions? Number 1, what are your pain points when it comes to strategic planning? I know there's lots. Number 2, do you have any strategic planning tips that you would like to share? And number 3, what are your plans for your upcoming strategic plans? And I know it's now time to network, so I'm going to let you guys go and discuss with your other members in your community. So please click the sessions button. And once your breakout session is done, you do not need to go back to this stage. The meeting will be adjourned. So thank you so much again, and I hope you enjoy your breakout sessions. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amanda.